Okay, today we're going to talk about fractions and decimals and how you go from a fraction to a decimal or a decimal to a fraction. Remember, both of these mean part of a whole. Your decimal, though, all decimal numbers will have to have a tenths place, a hundredths place, and a thousandths place, meaning all decimals have to be out of 10, 100, or 1,000. Okay, so let's look at the first picture. If you look at how much we have shaded, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shaded. Always easier to do the fraction part first. Out of 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 8 out of 20. Well, if we're going to go to a decimal, remember, it has to be a tenth, a hundredth, or a thousandth first. Well, there's a couple ways you can do this. Can a 20 become a 10? Yes, it can. How does 20 become 10? Well, you divide by 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. What you do the bottom, you do the top. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now we can easily say 4 tenths as a decimal looks like this. And remember, if you have a hard time finding that, if you have this as a decimal, 10 is what gives you the whole, so you can think of it as one whole. If you have a decimal down here, you have a decimal up here. 1 digit behind the decimal, 1 digit behind the decimal, so your decimal looks like this, as we did over here. Okay, there's another way to do this one as well. 8 out of 20, instead of going to 10, you could go to 100 by multiplying by 5. 8 times 5 is 40. So again, 100 make one whole, 2 digits behind the decimal, so 2 digits behind the decimal. So this one would be 0 and 40 hundredths. They both mean the same amount. This is just 4 big slices, and this is 40 smaller slices. Okay? Now, if one of these was your decimal, you also have to get the fraction in simplest form. We already know that we can take it down to 4 tenths. So let's go over here. You have 8 20ths. What goes into both of those? You could do 2, or you might automatically see that 4 goes into both, giving us 8 divided by 4 is 2. 20 divided by 4 is 5. The only way to get 2 is 1 times 2, and since 2 can't go into 5, the only thing they have in common is 1, making this your simplest form. Let's do a couple more examples. Let's say that we have 3 eighths, and we have to turn it, let's do 1 and 3 eighths, and we have to turn it into a decimal. Well, before we can turn a fraction or mixed number into a decimal, the bottom has to be a 10, a 100, or a 1,000. 8 cannot become 10. It cannot become 100, but it can become 1,000. So we have to take it to 1,000. We're still going to have our one whole. Don't lose that. Okay, still going to have the one whole. But how are we going to get from 8 to 1,000? Well, remember in class we did this. You do 1,000, split it into 800 and 200. Okay, what is 800 divided by 8? Well, that's 100. What is 2 divided by 8? That's 25. So 1,000 divided by 8 is 125. So to get from 8 to 1,000, you'd have to say 8 times 125 is 1,000. 3 times 125, well, 3 times 100 is 300, and 3 times 25 is 75, so 3 times 125 would be 375. Now from there, we can say that as a decimal. We know it's going to be one whole and something. If you looked at this, 1,000 would really make your one whole. So if this is here, this would be here, so it would be 1 and 3, 7, 5. Now, that would be going from a mixed number to a decimal. Now let's go the other way. Let's say that we have 3 and 565 thousandths, and we need to take that to a decimal. Well, that's pretty simple. The 3 and, that means 3 wholes, so you know it's going to be 3 wholes. 565 out of 1,000. Okay, well, for my fourth graders, remember, this can be your fourth grade answer, but then you need to attempt to simplify it. What goes into both 565 and 1,000? Well, we know 5 does, so let's do that first. Keep our 3 wholes. 5 goes into 500, 100. And then if you take the 65 and you split it into 50 and 15, so 5 goes into 500, 100 times. 5 goes into 50, 10 times. And 5 goes into 5, 3 times. So it'd be 113 times. Or you could come out to the side and actually divide it. 565 divided by 5. You could give each person 100, leaving you with 65. Give each person 10, leaving you with 15. Then you can give each person 3, leaving you with nothing. So they each got 113. Okay, so 113. And then 1,000 divided by 5. We know that 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 1,000 divided by 5 would be 200. Then you look and see, is there anything that goes into both of those? Well, it's not an even number, so we know 2 can't go into it. It doesn't end in a 5 or 0, so 5 or 10 can't go into it. Let's see, let's add them up. 3, 4, 5. When you add the digits, that's not divisible by 3 or 9. So 3 and 9 can't go into it. 7 can't go into it. So this is more than likely simplest form. So as a 5th grader, this is the answer I need to have. 4th grade, this is the one I need to have, but then attempt to simplify it. Let's try one more that's one more that's easier than that. Let's do 2 and 2 and 56 hundredths. We know it's going to be 2 wholes and 56 out of 100. And then you have to simplify. I know that 4 goes into both of those. Or you could do 2, but then you'd have to do 2 again. So it'd be 2 wholes. 56 divided by 4. Well, if we're doing 56, if we split 56 into 40 and 16, right, because those give you 56, 40 divided by 4 is 10, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 56 divided by 4 would be 14. And then 100 divided by 4 is 25. Now let's look. 14. Way to get 14 is 1 times 14 or 2 times 7. 14 can't go into 25. 7 can't go into 25. 2 can't go into 25. So the only thing they have in common is 1. So your final answer should be this right here. Now again, my 5th graders, or my 4th graders, this is the one I'm going to be grading, but then attempt this. My 5th graders, you have to have this answer.